There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues? With capital, the heart of their design. When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no. Which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print, say that this thing has got to go, and we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, yeah, everyone will want a sign.
I love our theme song. Shout out to Mr. Jared for making such an awesome theme song. I just jam to it every single time that we open up on the next show. It's like I've never heard it before. I'm just sitting here the whole time, like bouncing. I love it. So I'm so glad we have it. Hello, cousins. Welcome to Social Contract on the Revolutionary Blackout Network, part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network schedule of programming. We are so glad to have you here and all of our regular commenters. Good morning, good morning. Are you time traveler too, Miguel? And we're glad to have you with us. So we've got another packed episode for you. We always usually over the weekend we're usually shooting ideas back and forth about what we want to talk about on the show. And this time we ended up with too many topics, and we're like, we're gonna have to bump some of these topics because we are going a little too far with the things that we want to talk about.
We had a normal list of stuff, but then the bombs from Iran came in and
for real. Yeah, sometimes we'll be like, okay, we're going to do this. And then like everything just gets shifted because some stupid crap happens. But anyways, that's what it's all about, right? Like this is a live show. This is something that we just kind of try to play by ear as best as possible. And the more stationary topics we can kind of get to a little bit later. There's usually a lot of more pressing stuff to get to, just like now. So we have today on our docket of topics, we're going to be discussing the Civil War era law that has now been put into place in Arizona, but essentially banning all abortion, with the only exception of the saving the life of the mother. And
we do at least
Mr.
have
Jared,
an exception.
Yeah, Mr. Jared is a real life Arizonian. So we're going to get to talk to somebody who is going to kind of let us know what the social climate there is like around this, and what the local, how the campaigns, the local election campaigns are jumping on this, where they're coming from, that kind of a thing. So you're going to get to hear some on the ground reporting on this one. Yeah. So we've got that. Then we're going to try to do the best we can to cover what a lot of people are branding as World War III at this point, because we know that Iran made an overture, I guess you would say, against Israel based on their, Israel blowing up their embassy unprovoked. But right now, as of like this day right now, we're a little bit in a holding pattern. So we are, we can cover what's going on and what's coming up, but this is going to be kind of an ongoing thing. So we will see where it all leads, and we'll try and get you caught up if you haven't heard from other sources and all of that. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jared, who is going to start filling us in a little bit on what it's like to be in Arizona at this trying time.
Well, let's talk about Kari Lake. This is a good question for the chat. Really, everybody. Do people know who Kari Lake is outside of Arizona? Because we've been talking about her in the state for the last 4 or so years. Because actually, before that, she is a former
news anchor, like one of the local NBC, one of our local affiliates. I moved here far after the age where I was watching regular TV, and then for a while I was like, oh, I'll just pick up the free satellite, quote, regular TV, not satellite, what am I saying, antenna, like over the air, like antenna, regular TV, and then oh, sorry, it's all digital now, you have to get a special box, and now the configuration of my house makes I gotta get that back up, because you can occasionally watch football for free. Kids, if you're young enough and live near a city, you may be able to get a digital antenna for your TV that goes into the coaxial, the little screwy circle pinky finger looking thing in the back of your TV set, and then you can get free television such as Spanish language soap operas. There's a lot of there's a couple channels that just seem to run westerns like on a loop, and you can just watch old black and white westerns.
You know what,
sometimes free football.
It's called the Free TV Project. I know about that.
And oh, really?
Yeah, it's an actual thing. And if you have like a regular cable or something, or if you have regular digital, satellite or whatever, if you have that, or just over the air, you can scan your channels, and it will find two, three Western channels, three old TV where they play old episodes of old TV shows, some sports, some local news, that kind of a thing too. And it's also, if like your digital package, like if they're like, we're in dispute, we're not carrying NBC right now because money, and then you can usually get that the same way too. So but please go on.
So if you watch some over the air TV, which I do recommend, especially if you don't want to spend a bunch of money on things and don't stream on the internet, you could have seen Carrie Lake as one of the anchors for, I think it was ABC, it doesn't really matter, one of our local news channels. So like most of the Phoenix area for sure, and other parts of Arizona had been seen in Carrie's face for a long time. Man, English, I'm just real good at it. I'm like Shakespeare over here, I'm making up words.
You're doing the words real good today.
So Carrie is, like middle-aged pretty lady who talks on the TV, and she wanted to run for office, and
she started off as a liberal, didn't she? Isn't that
the whole point of really any of these segments? We are post-duopoly leftists, and we do not believe that the Republican and Democratic Party have really material differences. They have branding differences. The only real difference between them, at least in my opinion, is how we emotionally process what they do. When the Democrats do a thing, it's, oh no, they did the best they can, and oh no, because of all these horrible tragedies and whoopsie doodles, the bad thing happened. Where if Republicans do it, we process it as, those assholes meant that from the beginning. Like the same thing happens, but we feel differently about it depending on which party it is. That's really the only difference I can consistently identify in them. And as a great example, we have Carrie Lake, who here, let me play you a clip of don't just look at a photo of Carrie Lake, let's look at a video of Carrie. Headphone warning, this shouldn't blow your head off, but I'm always nervous when I do videos. 3, 2, 1.
Or justices or others, including Congressman Gosar, who has voted in favor of pro-life policies throughout his career. As a mother, I join Congressman Gosar in praying for God's guidance to the Supreme Court and an end to this national disgrace created under Roe v. Wade. This has been...
So, she referred to Roe v. Wade as a national disgrace. That was in 2022, that video, so a couple years ago.
Don't you love it when people call on God to do, like, if there was God's busy, okay?
I appreciate the realism, because she's not telling us to try and convince any of our phony baloney politicians. She's saying to pray to a supernatural entity, which I think is more effective.
At this point, it is. You're not wrong.
You're gonna get
nothing changes, nothing gets fixed. So, like, yeah, I guess, cover the bases.
Yeah, start making a freaking shrine to your favorite lord, and maybe that you'll get some effects there. So now we have Carrie Lake in an ad she put out like a month ago, like within the last month for this campaign season.
Total ban on abortion that the Arizona Supreme Court just ruled on is out of line with where the people of this state are. The issue is less about banning abortion and more about saving babies. I agree with President Trump. This is such a personal and private issue. I chose life, but I'm not every woman. I want to make sure that every woman who finds herself pregnant has more choices so that she can make that choice that I made.
I know that this is manipulative.
People.
I know this is manipulative and supposed to be like this, but goddamn, that is like the most reasonable stance on abortion that I've heard from a politician in America in a very, very long time. I agree with everything that Carrie Lake just said.
And it's so gross to have to do that. That's the way I always felt about Trump when he'd say something and he was right about something occasionally. You're like, God damn it, don't put me in a position to defend you. This sucks.
Oh crap, we have another Arizonan in the chat. Hello, what's going on?
Oh, nice.
We're within at least a few hundred miles of each other. I'm in Phoenix, but she's running for Senate, by the way. I think she the first time was going for, I don't remember if it was mayor of Phoenix or governor or kind of both. She's just around now as a candidate. She's been kind of, who better to be pulled into like the machine to be, she's going to be a great uniparty member. She will, as we just illustrated, she will say whatever the message is that she is told to go out and do. She is a little Teddy Ruxpin that you put the new cassette tape in, and she will say exactly what is on that tape. She has a pretty face. She can look into a camera and deliver lines. She is everything an American politician is supposed to be, and probably nothing more, because I think her head is empty.
Well, with that journalistic background, she knows exactly what notes to hit, exactly what, where she needs to face and talk, and how, at what speed, and use her, non-regional diction to really reel people in. So, and then I think the thing that was really important in what she said there was she said, I agree with Trump, because clearly what she did here
this is
exactly
a week after
what Trump has been doing, and we've talked about that before about Trump. Just like he'll say one thing and then flip in the same sentence and say the exact opposite of the thing, the flip-flopping. He's no dummy when it comes to that kind of thing. And she's taking the exact same strategy. And sometimes that works for people to follow in his footsteps, and sometimes it doesn't. A lot of times it's when people try to do crimes. And it's like, you are not known enough to do
you're
crimes.
You're not the guy. You can't.
You know what I mean? Like, you are not in that same boat, dude. Trump can do crimes all day. You're not him. So don't even get there.
The point of bringing these things up, again, we are post-duopoly leftists. We do not believe that the Republicans and Democrats, that one of them is the good guy, one of them is the bad guy. We believe that they are both parts of the same ruling class, though in slightly different, like the Democrats, fully united on everything. Most of the Republicans are also united on the same thing as Democrats. There's like one tiny group of a fraction in the owning class, which is between the super rich people who own like mines and oil rigs and shit, and the super rich dudes who own apps and server bays. And those groups are fighting with each other and have been for a while. Like, that's kind of how I think we accidentally ended up with a Trump in the first place. Yeah. Is there's that fraction in the ruling
they're all
class.
The bad guy. When you are playing for money and you are not doing any service to the people like the way that you are supposed to be, yet you are saying whatever you think your people have told you demographically is going to be the most successful to bring in the most attention to you and vis-a-vis more campaign money to you, these are grifts. This is grifting money off of people. And they are looking to you like, how many of you, right now, you can say so in the chat if you want to, how many of you get emails or phone messages or text messages from like Nancy Pelosi or Bernie Sanders saying, this is the most important campaign of our life. Can we have $5? No, you can go fuck yourself is what you can do. We are all at a place in this time when they're taking advantage of the most vulnerable people at the worst economic time that we've seen, like probably since the 70s, and trying to make it like it's all up to you, and that's what we're looking at here. And by her taking the Trump standard, using the Trump standard of ethics, it's so by the book. It's so playbook, because that's what he does. He will, and that's what he has done. At first, he was like taking credit for, I put the judges in who in the Supreme Court who shot down Roe versus Wade. Hell yeah, that was me. And then it became, I control abortion. And then it became, I think maybe the state should decide this. And it's like, and now it's up where we got this conservative who 2 years ago was saying, let's pray to God to get rid of abortion. And it's now like
talk to the Supreme Court.
Right. So it's like, yeah, I'm generalizing a little bit. I mean, the timeline there is not exact from what I'm saying.
And Kerry was a basic Democrat before.
When we're dealing with Trump and these people, they will say anything. And you don't get that as much with the Democrats. They kind of stick to the same message throughout. But the ping ponging is really just getting anybody from anywhere and trying to capitalize on knowing that people are not happy with the Democratic leadership either. So, I don't want to say that like anybody is not at fault or not to blame, but you really can't in this the strategy of politics, you really can't blame the Republicans for being like, okay, let's say what the Democrats should say also, and act like we're both, and try to pull in anybody that they can, try to get any money that they can, while they're still doing the biddings of, as Jared said, these giant corporations in the first place who are deciding our laws.
If you remember the Southern strategy, which is when to super simplify here, it's when the Republicans and Democrats essentially flipped opinions on race. Right. I don't remember how long ago, well, 60, 70, 80 years ago, like around like pre-LBJ times. They're like, all right, guys, the Democrats, we are now going to we're going to abandon the South, basically, like we're going to abandon our like rural, like in their views, like our rural white voters to pick up the northern, or I think we are now seeing like the northern strategy, where now you have the Democrats who are saying we need to build the wall and defend the border.
That actually is convenient to what we're talking about. That kind of happened in the Civil War, post-Civil War Reconstruction era as well, that the Republicans, I don't want to say...
The Republicans used to be the party of African Americans.
They
freed
sort of
the slaves.
Champion, exactly. They were sort of the champion. And the Southern Democrats, what were known as the Southern Democrats...
The Dixiecrats.
Were what we would essentially brand Republicans nowadays, but except for the fact that now the parties are pretty indistinguishable except for a few buzzwords, But when you see what Christy Rome just says, and did I say her name right? No, Carrie Lake. Wait.
Okay, I'm like, whoever.
What the hell am I talking about?
Cindy Lou Who, whoever the fuck they're running right now.
Right? It's just like, they're just these bobblehead people that it's just like, if you say the wrong name, like nobody's going to notice. But anyways, point is, the woman on your screen, can get away with saying what you think, what she and her team thinks that the Democrats should be saying to pull in unhappy Democratic voters. And even though this is a disingenuous play, like if they're all playing for the same team, she's still going to support, vote, move funds, go forward with anti-abortion, anti-choice types of things, but reel you in with this creative language because they know they're not worried about people like Jared and myself and RBN. They're not worried about the people in the chat right now. They're worried about Democrats and they're worried about Republicans. Because those are the people who are sycophantic to one group or the other. And if they can pull in some people from the opposite team, that's what they are worried about. They know they lost us already, so they don't care. But there's, the people who are faithful to these parties are, even Democrats are not happy right now. So even the most, the biggest stands for Democrats are like, you know what? Some of them are starting to come around a little bit. Some of the worst, most offending liberals, and that's again out of hate. It's like, don't, what's that Onion, from the Onion, that post you see every now and again where it's like tragic, the worst person, has a excellent opinion on something, and it's like, God damn it. That's exactly what it's like. You don't want to have to agree with people that have the worst opinions all the time because things are so backwards and wrong. And
I believe this is all part of the continual attempt because if you remember, it's class is what matters. These parties are just basically an illusion of fake competition to be like, oh, if you don't like Coke, go drink Pepsi. Well, guess what? The same guy owns Coke and Pepsi in this analogy. Like, not in reality, but you know what I'm saying? The same people that pay the Democrats pay the Republicans. It's all the same overclass. We have the owning class, which then works the government, which then gets the owning class's jobs done. It's not like, oh, the government tells the who what to... No, government is not even... The U.S. government is not even like the top layer of power. You might call it the deep state. You might refer to these people as, quote, globalists, or I call them the Marxian term, the imperialists, are our ultimate owning class, the ultra-imperialist bank-owning gangsters that actually make decisions in the world, who, if America catches on fire tomorrow, will simply go to Holland or one of their several private islands out in the middle of nowhere, Ireland, they'll just take over somewhere else. So, like, they have a vested interest in keeping the underclass, everyone else, the 99.9% of people fighting each other, and if they kind of look like they're starting to coalesce around shit, oh, better jumble some shit. Your parties are all flipping opinions. Better start just to keep the us fighting each other thing going. Let me blaze through a little bit of this article just so I can throw out some, I guess, facts. It's the Washington Post, so there may be a fact or two in here. In 2022, Republican candidate Carrie Lake, who was vying to be governor, called abortion the ultimate sin and praised a 160-year-old Arizona measure that virtually outlawed abortion as a great law. Also, that's a pre-state law. We became a state in 1912. And that was in 1860 something is when that law went in. In 2024, Lake, now vying to be U.S. Senator, taking the Kirsten Sinema, who went independent and is no longer doing politics. She did the curtsy to not vote for the minimum wage a little while ago.
She got lobbying. They usually always go into lobbying.
Probably. She's gonna pop up again. She's another great puppet. She was like a black bloc protester throwing bricks through windows, and then like less than 10 years later, she's voting no to increase the minimum wage and doing all right. Yeah. They say that the law is now, they say that it's out of step with Arizonans, like that video clip we just showed. Lake, a former television news anchor who narrowly lost, she almost won, her 2022 gubernatorial race to Katie Hobbs, has been, oh yeah, we have a Democrat governor. I can just feel it. Everything's so great here now. Has been striking a different tone on reproductive rights as the issue shapes up to be an animating force this election cycle. The spotlight has been strong on Arizona since the court ruled that the near total ban, which was enacted even before Arizona was a state, can be enforced. That was determined recently. So hey, there we go. The ruling, it's now in effect, it was like a 1 day away when they wrote this, would outlaw the procedure except to save a pregnant person's life. Healthcare providers who perform abortions could be punished with prison time, though Arizona's Attorney General, Democrat Chris Mays, has vowed not to enforce any ban. The decision has sent shockwaves throughout the battleground state and could jeopardize Republican hopes of picking up a seat in the U.S. Senate. Lake is expected to face Democratic Representative Ruben Gallego in the November general election. I have no emotions or feelings towards Gallego. He is, as far as I know, a different shaped puppet. Since Tuesday's ruling, Lake has called on Hobbs and the GOP-led state legislature to come together on a solution. In a 5.5-minute campaign video we watched a little bit from, released Thursday, Lake sought to appeal to the majority of the state, saying the near-total abortion ban, which invokes a 1864 law that states anyone who administers an abortion could face a mandatory prison sentence of 2 to 5 years, that's actually kind of light. I mean, most of these states have been like, it's a murder and it's life in prison, so it's like, 2 years. Did an abortion, got some probation, is out of line with where people of this state are, and that's it. There's not like that. That's the open and shut of it. Any other thoughts you can add to this?
Well,
that we haven't already said.
As a matter of fact, there's the resident lady person on this panel.
Yeah, how do you feel?
This is what's really important here to take away from this is. Forget the talking heads for a minute. Forget the hot button issuing. Forget the election. Forget, the news. No matter what happens in any state in this country or anywhere in the world that bans it, allows it, whatever, abortion will continue. And the wealthy jet set class will always have access to it, bar none. They will have the best possible access to it, whether it's legal or not. What this does is take away the safety of low-income people and people that have experienced traumas, rapes, what have you, or just don't want to have a pregnancy, go through with a pregnancy for any reason. It takes away their ability to safely get the same services that wealthy people get. So that is the bottom line. It doesn't matter who you support, you don't support, who you like, you don't like. It doesn't matter what anybody is saying. That is the fact of the matter. Abortion will always continue. The fact of safe abortion is what is up for discussion at this point. And we don't hear enough from these people about that particular point because they want to pretend like they are not controlled by this wealth class, but that all the people that they serve are equal and that they treat everyone equally. So they don't want to admit to the fact that they are being paid to say these things and to do these things. And that's the whole issue here. So, but also don't forget, on the same token here, people who are on welfare, people who are on Medicaid, people who are disabled, people who are of color, these people, politicians and their think tanks, don't consider them useful, contributing real human people. They consider them nothing because they don't offer their campaigns anything. They don't do anything for them. They consider them drains on society. This is how poor people of any persuasion have always been treated in this country in particular, and in capitalist countries all over the world. If you are not generating massive capital, you are worthless. And that's why workers at the lower levels who are actually doing the work are considered useless and worthless and are getting squeezed so much for income taxes and property taxes and things of this nature. It's in collusion. It all goes together. These things are one thing. This is another faction of the war on the poor.
It's class war, baby. If I have to have an opinion on abortion, it's like I said, Carrie Lake's opening sentence is basically my exact opinion on the whole thing. Freaking, if I want to go back to Hillary Clinton's 90s line where it's like abortion should be safe, legal, and rare, I think that's what it should be. I don't think anyone really is running around the world going like, I love getting abortions and I just want to get one every other month. Like, I don't think those people really exist in any kind of large numbers that need to be considered. Maybe there's one, but yeah. If this is one of those boring society things, like trying to like solve crime, the way you end up solving abortion is all these other issues that have like, why are people getting abortions in the first place? Usually because either something terrible has happened to them or they are economically unable to deal with a child, which also is something terrible happening to you, but it's not like you weren't just like
money,
raped by
maybe
your
they'll
uncle
have more
or something.
babies. You know?
Exactly. If you
maybe they will want to. Maybe they can. Why do you think that the birth rate right now is so low among millennials and Gen X? Gen Z. They cannot afford children.
I'm sorry, I forgot another hilarious point here. Guess what Comrade Lake wants to give us? Along with outlining her position on abortion, Lake also expressed her support for what she called a baby bonus, providing tax incentives for individuals who get married and lowering their tax rate for each child born.
Jesus Christ.
Doesn't that sound like a child care tax credit of some kind?
Yeah. Oh wow. Imagine that. And, here's the other big issue. You kind of touched on this a little bit. This is this is what divides on this issue the liberals from the socialists and communists and that kind of a thing. And where you've heard, I'm sure, the term, you scratch a liberal and a conservative.
Fascist bleeds.
Or fascist
conservative,
bleeds.
You're very nice.
Now this is what separates the men from the boys. Okay, using an old term here. This is what separates it, because liberals don't want to fully commit. We know the conservative agenda about it, right? They know that whether they believe it themselves or not, whatever, they know that they can appeal to the people who think it's murder, the religious faction of this country, which is a majority. But the liberals want to act like they're with the socialists because it's cool by saying, no, pussy hats, women's autonomy, our bodies, our choice, my uterus, what. Okay. So that means, if that's the case, then that means that you accept every single incident that could possibly happen where an abortion is chosen or necessary, which means the life of the mother, which means the choice of the mother, which means anything for any reason at any time. And the hot button issue here is this, because the conservatives love to jump all over this. Conservatives think, and I don't mean the conservative politicians, they know better. They got the information, they got the statistics, they know better. But they're appealing to the people who don't know better, who think that women are out there, at month 8.5 and are like, I'm done with this. I'm getting an abortion, right? They think that's a thing. Now, yes, late-term abortion is a thing, but it is only done in extreme circumstances, like as if the baby has died, as if the baby has developed some sort of ailment that is not going to allow it to survive childbirth. And what you have to realize is, if you support abortion, that means you support that case as well. And they like to scare people with the idea that these women are just going to be like, I'm done with this. I want to kill this baby. That is always the hot button issue. And that's where the liberals jump in here and think like, oh, I can't support that. That's totally possible. That's a thing that can happen. And then they end up with the conservative opinion all along, because that circumstance, although you have to admit it is a possibility, is absurdly rare that anybody would do that. That a woman at month 8 or so would walk into an abortion clinic and say, take care of this. If that had happened, and there was nothing wrong with the pregnancy, nothing wrong with her, she was in no danger, nothing wrong with the child, then these to say that would happen, that means that there's something going on with her mentally that is more about her mental fitness and wellness than it is about the actual pregnancy, in which case she would be subject to some other kind of care, another kind of scenario, like, okay, like clearly you're having an issue, let's go, get you to the right people to deal with this. And then if you don't want the baby, you can have the baby and put it up for adoption, that kind of a thing. But the thing of it is this whole scenario that they like to throw out at you is impossibly rare. But if you are to the point that it just doesn't even really happen, if you listen to conservative politicians, they say it happens right, left, and center. It doesn't. It does not happen. It is not natural for someone to go all the way through a pregnancy and then decide they're done with it without there being some sort of issue preceding that. Okay. So that's where liberals jump off board and jump on with the conservatives. But if you truly believe that women or uterus havers, whatever you want to define it as, own 100% the right to their own body and the right to their own choices, and you have to accept that is a possibility that can happen. So if you accept that that's a possibility that can happen, then you also need to be supporting universal health care and mental wellness care to make sure that if you're so worried about someone doing that, someone killing a full-term baby, that they have the other kind of resources that they need for if they do show up at a clinic and ask for that kind of a service, that they can get some other kind of help. And that's where the whole divide comes in, where we see you support it. Oh, no, you don't actually support it then? Okay, that's the issue.
Hypotheticals drive me crazy because it's just like, well, if all options are options, if we're truly like we have blank slate and can do anything that we want, like I don't have nearly enough. Please don't like go crazy quote me on this, but I've heard about I'm pretty sure it was Nicaragua, like one of these Latin American countries where they have like on the books abortion is illegal, but at the same time, the way that people who know they can't take care of their children are treated is extremely different than in the U.S. They're like, look, here's the facility. Like they essentially are like, all right, we're taking care of you until this baby is born. We're taking care of the child throughout. You're going to get help after after your baby is born. Like we will then facilitate an adoption. It's going to need a little bit of both. It's this big issue that has all these other little fingers reaching down into it, which are mostly like that all have a class character to them. It's relatively like if you have enough resources in this country, getting pregnant is less of a oh shit what do we do than if you have very, very few resources, where it becomes this whole like freaking messed up Sophie's choice. Do I ruin my life and relationships or do I do this? Like what? Which is never a situation you should end up in the richest country in the history of the universe that we know of.
That's exactly right. That is the correct take. But that you have to define yourself, with you support it or you don't support it, because if you support it, then you're also saying, okay, well, in these worst case scenario possibilities, then we need more resources to deal with it. And then the issue becomes null. So obviously don't believe conservative candidates who are banging the drum on saying this, out there, with their tambourine, like they're killing the babies, because we know up until the point, there's a certain point in abortion care and natal care where we know it's like not an actual thing, now a thing. So they are just harping on this tale as old as time situation. And someone in the chat kind of mentioned this about, let me see, Cobra Commander says all life is precious in the Bible. Then proceeds to eat 30,000 children in Gaza. This is absolutely true. And it's just about what Jared just said, which is like, oh, okay, we insist you in this country, we insist you have this baby you can't afford, that upsets you for the way that it happened, that you have no means to take care of, that you may not even bond with because you are in such a bad situation, could potentially ruin your life, any career aspirations, on and on and on and on. And then we're going to penalize you even further by making sure that you barely qualify for any kind of services, that you are in constant jeopardy of losing them, WIC services, Medicare or Medicaid, excuse me, and these kind of issues. Because, when people are getting thrown off their Medicaid, right and left, because, a lot of people during the pandemic qualified for it because they, would be sick and out of work, this kind of thing. And now the government in the states are going through, it's a state-run situation, are going through just, we talk about yeeting people off and stuff. That's exactly what's happening with that. But it's happening to children too. And I'm talking about children with cancers that like cannot live without these things. And then that's the whole issue, like they are. If you want to help, the situation, we have to look at the bigger picture. Abortion is like this, in this, okay? Like you got to look at like Okay, if you don't want people to have abortions, provide them with good housing, provide them with nutritious food, provide them with supplies for their child, provide them with parenting courses and classes so that they don't, like you find out that they're, could actually take care of the child, that they've learned how to do this. Make sure that there is adequate safety measures in place for people who have been, harmed, raped, forced against their will, or children and they're in that situation, that we need all these other social services to compensate for that. So you want abortion to stop? Cool. Do something else about it. No, that's one tiny piece of the giant puzzle here that needs to be solved, that we all know. It's not just about, I don't have health care, you don't have health care, my health care got taken away, et cetera, et cetera. It's all these social safety nets that just logically should already be in place. And that is why we're here. That is why this show exists, because we need to talk to other people who know and have gone through these things, that we are at a massive disadvantage in this country because all of our money goes to war and pharmaceutical commercials, essentially. So
it's not that I consider abortion a quote culture war issue, because it is that makes it seem unimportant. It's when you take, because how many different things we've been talking about associated with it for the last 10 minutes here, and when you take just specifically and only abortion and pull it out of what is really a complicated social safety net and what should be a robust healthcare system, if you pick out one tiny little individual part of it, you can have infinite fights about it because you can ignore all of the other. If you don't look at it dialectically, is really what it is. You have to look at it from all these different badrillion angles, and the fact that we only analyze specifically just abortion and abortion itself, that I think is a culture war thing, because they know that they're never going to get that much consent. Actually, it's kind of funny because we sort of have developed a bit of a consensus, haven't we? Since Roe v. Wade went out, every state that puts it up for a vote, the people in general seem to actually, they do support their right to have an abortion. Even people who are, quote, anti-abortion, very few of them are like, it should always absolutely be illegal and you go to jail and you're put in the electric chair. Very few people are like that. And it's kind of makes me happy. If they put it up for a vote here in Arizona, I think that's how it's going to go too. Do you want to look at Trump at possibly accidentally getting bullied into doing the right thing? I have a video clip. Yeah. Let me play this bit.
Yeah.
I'm changing gears here, but it's almost not changing gears, because hey, you saw Carrie Lake completely flip her position on a thing because she knows it will win her votes, because that's how things have to be. Here's another guy seemingly changing. Is this a position change? I don't know. Audio coming in, headphone warning. 3, 2, 1.
A big problem.
Genocide Joe! Genocide Joe! Genocide Joe! Genocide Joe! Genocide Joe! Genocide Joe! Genocide Joe!
They're not wrong. They're not wrong. He's done everything wrong.
So we have Trump rally, some people in the thing, including, as you see, a lot of the people behind him. So the people who actually got onto the stage. I don't know what I've never gone to a rally that is big enough that they're putting anybody behind him. Went to one little Bernie rally where he stood in a parking lot and we're all like, hey. So I don't know how that works, but even the people behind him, you see Genocide Joe, and people around, there's a bit of murmuring. They're like, what is this? Oh, genocide. And then it grows and grows, and you have most of the room is now chanting Genocide Joe. I wonder how many of them even know what that's about. But what does Trump do? He looks around, he considers, he's like, okay, they're into this. They're not wrong. They're not wrong. And I'm like, what are you saying, Mr. Former President? Donnie, you're going around saying how much you love Israel and how much Biden does not support Israel enough, and then people at your rally, Genocide Joe. You know what? Fuck it, Genocide Joe.
Right?
It's not that I think Trump is this principled guy. It's that I hear this on this is a due dissonance line where he's not. They used to say he's a good businessman, bad politician. I think he's a very bad businessman and a very good politician, because he can read a room and go, all right, they want this, let's do that. It's not that I think he's a principled guy who's going to do the right thing on purpose, but it's that tweet we shared a couple of weeks ago. Isn't it great that in America, the most hope you have is that this one weird-ass group accidentally stumbles backwards into doing the right thing, which which is coming from what? The pressure of the general hoi polloi, supposedly the worst people in the world, the MAGAs, the most horrible, brutish, orc-like people in the country. I'm being sarcastic here. They're the ones who are currently bullying Trump, apparently, into taking an anti-genocide position. What do you make of this clip?
I think that, well, first of all, it's very funny.
It's very weird. Did not expect.
The weirdness is what's funny about it, because you're right. They may not exactly. That could have been like somebody who, how he has a habit of, not just him, but he's well known for having people, plants in the audience. So it's very likely that one of his campaign plants started that chant, and then they're, oh, just that joke, just to get people agitated about it, whether he necessarily realized it was going to happen or not. Because we are talking about this place that we're in is really unprecedented in the way that you cannot ignore what's going on with the favor against Israel by the people towards in favor of Palestine and what they're going through. And this is, domestically, this is internationally, and that call is growing. Yesterday, what was it? The Golden Gate Bridge, protesters shut down the Golden Gate Bridge, and I think was it O'Hare Airport? Like, it was going on yesterday, and favor is just growing for this movement, which is primarily being carried out by people who are trying to support people who they will never meet in a place they will never go, who look and pray differently than they do. And these people see this. These campaign people see this. They see that this is gaining such momentum that there's really no going back from it. That if they don't do something to make it look like they are the opposition to this, then that's exactly what we just witnessed with the flip-flopping on with let me get it right this time, Carrie Lake, which was, she 2 years ago was like, abortion is a scourge, Roe versus Wade is a scourge, pray to God, pray to God. Then in this next one, she's like, no, everybody should have the choice that they should have, because she's trying to reel in the opposition voters. This is exactly the same scenario. And Trump used to get chided all the time for, he just sits around and watches the news. He just sits around and flips channels all the time. He calls it a Fox News morning show once a day. He's paying attention, like, let alone the team of people around and paid analysts that do this. He is paying attention. He has his feelers out for what people are going through. And even though the mainstream media is not reporting on this, he also has the whole Truth Social, whatever. He's hearing the opposition. His people are telling him about the opposition, not because it's morally correct or incorrect according to them, but because it's an opportunity to jump on it and flip some voters. That's what we're looking at.
Biden has the same ability, actually more so, like, he could do the same kind of nonsense, and in messaging, it's already been happening, where he's like, on one hand, the whole, like, in private, I'm having these very serious conversations where I'm like, no, and while simultaneously sending more bombs. And I'm kind of enthused that everyone points that out. Like, that's not some weird fringe conspiracy thing that no one believes me when I say it. Everyone knows it. It's just, even the mainstream outlets just are straight up saying it. I think we're not going to have Biden at the end of this election, because otherwise it does not make, unless, because, like, there's the two chunks of the owning class that are currently in a slight tiff. You have the industrial owning class, which, like Trump, like, your real estate developers, your people who have capital that's physical shit, like factories and mines. And then you have the techno owning class, the people who own Facebook and Apple and Google, who are the more powerful group right now. So, like, I don't understand why we're just throwing Biden fully under the bus. Everybody's calling him an asshole in public. So, like, is it going to be a swap out at the convention? Are they going to fucking kill him? Like, what?
This is something we talked about at the beginning of the year too, because we kind of came together and we're like, okay, we can probably do this ongoing election thing, like every 6 weeks or so.
I don't think about it that much.
Nothing's fucking happening. Nothing's happening. We haven't been able to do it because this has been the most uneventful election I have ever witnessed in my life.
They might not do debates. I'll be sad if they don't do the debates. That'd be funny as hell.
Jesus Christ. But the fact of it is that that's what it is. It's like things have become so uniparty, so mixed up, and then when you look at this, like the voter statistics, it's pretty much a dead heat. And if it's like close to like 50, let's say close to 50-50 for each candidate, that means it's close to 50-50 against each candidate. So people both like and hate these people in the same exact measure. We have never been in a stupider place politically than we are right now, and there could never be a better time and a better call to upend or sidestep this system as much as possible. So the fact of the matter is that there are no facts to the matter. This is just one big tangle of a mess of nothing that probably we did kind of theorize on maybe there would be a switch out at the convention. And because I don't know if they'll have the guts to take on Kamala Harris as a running mate again due to her unpopularity. They certainly won't put her forward because she'd lose like so bad it would like, implode. But I think maybe it's a Gavin Newsom, thing that they might.
People in the chat are floating like maybe RFK is they could swap. I think of between Gavin Newsom, RFK Jr., and Kamala Harris, RFK Jr. has any hope of actually doing anything with that. Those other two will just be like, cool, we can swap them out to watch them lose instead, which would be funnier.
Right.
I would love if they swatched it out for Kamala, because she will lose, and then she goes away, but she doesn't, because Hillary didn't go away after she lost either.
No.
So who knows?
She's this new parasitic entity that's going to hang on forever.
But crap. I'm down to like my last 5 minutes here. I forgot to say at the beginning. I have to duck out earlier today, so you'll be ending with Nicolette. But hey, Iran or Iran. Either way I say it, I feel like I'm like, it's the thing where like, technically it's pronounced Cuba, but if I walk around talking about Cuba, people will roll their eyes at me and think I'm a dildo.
I mean, come on, we're Americans. We talk how we talk.
Also in chat, after you said O'Hare Airport, they're like, oh, she said it right, O'Hare. I'm like, is there other way to say the name of Chicago's ORD O'Hare Airport? Do people say it differently? O'Hare? What other pronunciations are there? So I was looking for headlines of like which article do I specifically pull to read from. I pull these almost at random and usually from specifically mainstream sources, so no one can say that I'm looking up weird conspiracy things. But this headline kind of surprised even me. U.S. to Israel: if you strike back at Iran, you'll do it alone. As Israel on Monday weighed its response to Iran's stunning attacks this weekend, the U.S. is privately telling officials there, if Israel strikes back militarily, it will do so alone. It is an unusual message for a close ally that spent decades receiving more U.S. military aid than any other country in the world and whose relationship with America is often described as, quote, ironclad. But months after months of Israel acting on its own in Gaza, and facing tough criticism from the U.S. and other allies that its military operations have gone too far, the Biden administration made clear the U.S. wouldn't participate in offensive military operations against Iran, fearing a broader war in the Middle East. We believe Israel has, quote, we believe Israel has freedom of action to protect itself and defend itself. No one is named in this, which is weird. A senior administration official told reporters shortly after Iran's attack ended. That's a long-standing policy, and that remains. To summarize, you have Israel attacked Syria, but the Iranian embassy. So they blew up Iran's embassy in Syria, and Israel strikes Syria all the time, so that's not really that weird, but it is against international law to blow up people's embassies, if you didn't already kind of know that in the back of your head. Yeah, that isn't a thing you're supposed to do, and the UN not happy. So then, Iran is basically allowed to retaliate, because that retaliation is now legal. Like, Israel did a crime, so then legally, due to like the war rules of the world and UN things, Iran is now totally allowed. They are basically free to. You get to now do a strike back. That's kind of how it works, I guess. So Iran told everybody 72 hours in advance that this shit was coming. They don't talk to the US directly, but like they call Canada, and then Canada tells us, or whatever the hell. Like someone talks to someone who telephones it along. What do you think the number of deaths was? How many people do you think died in this Iranian strike against Israel? Because that number is 7 fewer than those that died when Israel bombed the consulate illegally. They killed 7 people, including a couple generals and their children. I mean, they're adult children, but still sucks. Anytime someone's son dies, it makes it all more emotional. And I'm not laughing at the death. What am I supposed to do?
Irony.
Just say that all the time. Yeah, the irony. And the number of people that Iran killed in their strike, 0 people. They struck an Air Force base that they told them that they were going to strike 3 days ahead of time. You'll hear all these headlines talking about 99% of their missiles were blocked. Yeah, that's kind of like by design. Iran was throwing in these like cluster bomb things where the missile comes in and then it starts getting tracked. So it splits into 2 bombs. Now it's tracked. And then it splits into like 50 bombs. And then the last one goes like, wow, like right at the... It's all kind of, I'm not a big military head, but it all sounds very fancy. And the reason I bring it up is, remember, Iran is this horrible backwards caveman nation of sand people who don't know how plumbing works, yet they can break through the most sophisticated missile defense system on the fucking planet. This is the most heavily guarded, the most technologically, Israel's small, it's one little country. They have the most concentrated American defense systems that exist, and ours are supposed to be the best, right? And we were unable to stop Iran from striking the target it said it was going to strike 3 days ahead of time. They had 3 days to point all their shit where it's going. They had help from Jordan. They had help from Saudi Arabia. They were shooting down some of these missiles. Why? It's all very complicated. Nobody really likes each other over there. But Iran was still, boom, baby, we're going to hit that base. We will hit another base whenever the hell we feel like it. And that very much changes the character of this conflict. It seems like Iran is being very, very polite in that, hey guys, we can blow up any base of yours we want, whenever we want. Get your head out of your ass. Seems to be where we are. And for that reason, I actually think this is not necessarily the outbreak of World War III, unless Israel says, YOLO, we're just going to do full all-out war on Iran. Because that would definitely cause some escalations. But at the moment, it seems like this was an escalation. This was actually a leveling off. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Nicolette?
You're exactly right. Iran also seized a cargo ship that was headed for, or actually I don't know where it was headed to or from, but it was associated with Israeli, ownership products. So they made these overtures in retaliation, obviously, of what had been done, but they did it very by the book, very precision-like, very obeying of the rules, and yet every ruling or every guidance or every piece of information that's come from the International Court of Justice that told Israel to abide by these conventions, to stop attacking, their neighbors, to stop attacking Palestine, they have ignored openly and blatantly. Yet they also went to the ICJ and said, Iran, stop them, so there's that as well. They have always had a problem with each other, always. So that's an issue as well. So we, but I think the main headline is that they have put out in the American news that America was like, we're not going to back you in this. That's horseshit. We'll back them to the end of the earth. They're our interest. There is no Israel without United States money. That's where this all comes from. That's where this all goes. But they don't. That's not to say at any certain point that if they let off Netanyahu on a long enough leash, that they won't say he was the bad guy and insane the whole time, Gaddafi the shit out of him, and then everybody that they tell in the mainstream media he was crazy and we had to dispose him in this really incredible way, So that is an open point at any time. But then we would just put a new person in place and let that person do our bidding. So that is a very real option on the table. So even though the media now says we're not supporting this conflict, we are definitely supporting this conflict. To what end is the question? Yeah,
they're spinning the wheels. They're being like, how long can this coast? Like, what all can we get out of this? The who is it? The Dr. Nick in the chat is also talking about how, like, yeah, we're BRICS, the BRICS Economic Alliance. If I'm not wrong, I think Iran is joining that. Like a bunch of Middle Eastern partners are showing up. So it seems like a rush to try and consolidate as much power as possible before it is consolidated by somebody else. Because we spent like 70 years just poking at and prodding apart this. Like they try to build the Jenga tower and we knock it back down. Like anybody who starts getting things together, we either assassinate or overthrow. Like freaking you mentioned Gaddafi. I'm trying to remember there was a socialist leader elected in the freaking Congo, like in the 70s or 80s. I wish I had my history. I have the forms and shapes of history. Like you'll talk about people who are visually impaired and they're like, I can see colors and shapes, but not definition. I'm like, that's my view of history. I know the general.
I know who you're talking about, but his name escapes me. I can see his face.
Is it Guyana that we overthrew? One of those things. Gambia, one of the G names. I'm only like a moron +1. Like take your average moron and add a little bit. I've read one book, and apparently people pronounce O'Hare Airport O'Hara. What? Okay. Yeah. Well, my friends, I have to bail out for now. Nicolette will be taking care of for the next 5 minutes. I'll see you guys next time. and enjoy your Iran conversation.
Yes. Goodbye, friend. Take care. Well, okay, you want to go like here? I got a hood on my. We can go dark. The dark version now. No, I'm just kidding. We basically said what we wanted to say in this episode because we like to try to do domestic information as well. That is directly affecting people because we know that this war in Iran, unless you have people in the military, is not necessarily affecting you personally in your day-to-day life, but something like abortion rights, control, autonomy, that kind of thing does. So with that being said, we're going to keep up on both of these stories as they evolve because we know that when it comes to the abortion scenario, that's mostly being used as fundraising on both sides. And well, I use the term both sides liberally as we've talked about the Uniparty quite a bit. But yes, thanks to everyone saying bye to Jared. He appreciates it. He's got stuff to do. He's a busy man. So, but when it comes to this more international conflict that we've been following, as we said last week, and we reached the 6-month mark of this particular conflict of, not that it hasn't been going on for many decades at this point, but we are at the point now that it's like, things are really heating up in a very mysterious kind of way. We don't exactly know, you always have to assume that there's military strategy going on at any given time that, are planning these things really meticulously. So it's like everything that we hear, it's almost as if you're hearing it like, during the party line, you're hearing it like third, what am I trying to say? Like third party information. It's like down the line. So we're not in the decision room of all these places. So we are waiting to see, all of us, we're all waiting to see where this is going to go. Even though Iran handled it all very upfront in a way. And it's almost sort of like, you can't just be like, oh, let's give it to Iran. No, that's not the argument here. The argument is, it's sort of like when like people get in an argument, but then the first person wants to explain it their way and and they're being more logical to make the other person sound crazy. Both of these situations they're two very hot button issues, mostly because they're close enough to each other to cause each other problems. They've always been having problems back and forth. This again is not new. So it's just Iran has taken at this point in time what seems like the more strategic higher road in putting all of this stuff forward and saying, okay, we've put out our weaponry. We did what we set out to do. We bombed the targets we said we were going to bomb. We told you that we were going to do it well in advance, and we seized your cargo ship. And at this point, we consider the issue closed because we, kind of playing by the rules of war scenario. So it remains to be seen if Israel is then going to retaliate on the retaliation, because don't forget, in this conflict, Israel started this, just like all of it. And this really goes into the greater part of the conversation of the greater Israel concept, because this conflict is not going to stop with Palestine. Say that they really do get the final solution out. They really do exterminate Palestine. They really do take full control of it. They're able to bring in all these buyers, all these resource drainers, that have all the stake in this land and this movement. That's not going to stop at the border of Palestine. That's going to extend further on to the rest of the world. And why that matters, other than the obvious point, is because when you look in the grand scheme of things, here's Israel, this little fart on the map of a country, who decides it's going to usurp its borders and start, taking up the resources and the places around it and turning them to their ideology, the Zionistic ideology, taking away, the land of the people who actually are meant to be there. Because don't forget, they're not some sovereign nation doing all this of their own accord with their own funding and their own abilities and resources. This is all funded from the outside by primarily the United States. So, where in history have you heard that story before? Maybe in World War I and II, when Germany, this other little fart on the map, decided it was going to do the exact same thing. Decided it was going to start usurping its borders and start taking the resources and converting people to different ideologies of their, and expand outward with a plan to, take over the whole world, essentially, and that had to be in check twice. There were 2 world wars about it. Okay. And that's not to say that, as we are taught as Americans in school, that we were this big hoorah, wonderful, we are the police of the world, we're the good guys, this big romantic story that in particularly we saw, you see in things like Band of Brothers and Saving Private Ryan, and that big romantic, what's the one with the Ben Affleck and the Pearl Harbor. There was this big, especially in the 90s, there's this big romantic movement of like, oh, we band together, and it was so heroic, and it was so great, and everybody sacrificed for this greater good, and we defeated the evil. And that was all horseshit, and that was really programming a lot of young people in, kind of the pre 9/11 era, kind of getting people used to the idea that there's, if you sacrifice, it's real. But I need to point out here, there is no heroicism in war. If you're killing another person or they're killing you, there's no heroics there. If you're killing anything, there's no heroics there. Good guy, bad guy, that's not the issue. It's not heroic. It's not romantic. It's not awesome. It's not cool. So the issue is a lot of people have been, kind of inundated by media to kind of think that like, oh, this is something that's good or heroic, or I could be a hero too, which is obviously what, works for the military. But, when you look historically at the picture of what happened in World War II, it is similar but different, because we also saw that the United States stance, they weren't necessarily funding it, but they weren't, the rise of Nazism, but they weren't against it either, because a lot of people don't know, because of our American educations being propaganda, that there were massive movements in the United States for the Nazi parties. There were rallies, huge rallies all over this country, especially in the major places, major cities, states. It was a movement. It was a full-on movement. Hitler was on the cover of Time magazine when he was chancellor as being this sort of wonderkin civics leader type of a guy. Like, this stuff was really popular here. There were feelers out everywhere, and all over the world. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. Zionism fundamentally is no different than Nazism. So, and it's working the exact same way some 80 years later. We're seeing this tiny little country trying to usurp, cleanse the ethnic people, trying to usurp the borders, trying to force their values on people. And that's where we're coming from, and that's where we're going to, and we're seeing this happen again. And that's why I always try to say, refer to what's going on in history to look forward. And don't forget also, at that time in the Second World War, we didn't enter, both of them actually, we didn't enter until it was absolutely necessary, at the very end each time. And then we take all the credit historically in our books and in our media, but that's not how it happened. And, we were not the big heroes. We were not the big guys. We did not save the day. It was really other people that did this. But, for all intents and purposes, we're told it's the other way around. So, but, at the end, in both cases, when people were trying to flee the area in Germany and surrounding areas, the United States barred their entry for, in a lot of cases. They just, do what they always do here, which is just like, no immigrants, by a country built by immigrants. The exact same scenario is happening. There's really not this great big movement to get Palestinians out and here and safe. That's not really happening, man. It's a small trickle, and we all know the immigration system is just a total joke anyways. So we have that issue there as well. So when we come around to the point here, is we are seeing a situation play out the exact same way that it did in the First and the Second World Wars. And that's why a lot of people are referring to this as a World War III scenario. Yet, as of right now, we are in a holding pattern to find out who's going to make the next move, what's it going to be like, are we going to suddenly turn on Netanyahu and then reinstall somebody else to do the exact same dirty work? It remains to be seen at this point. So we are very, very much in a historic place of repetition. And if you want more information on that, you can look up the actual circumstances of both world wars. Good luck, because you're going to get a lot of misleading information, but that's the fact of the matter. So as we watch things unfold, remember that this has happened 2 times before. So it's not necessarily a trigger happy moment to say that this could be a World War III situation. I think we're a little premature on that just now, but other countries are aware. And other countries do see what's happening in Palestine and don't support it. We also have this BRIC situation that's kind of taking its own precedent to kind of challenge the US dollar and challenge America's stronghold on, trade and industry in the world. So we're seeing how that's playing out. So right now, while we wait and we see, we just have to remember that, we can't buy into the American propaganda about everything. You're going to be constantly telling your relatives and the people in your life about what's going on, and they're going to think you're some sort of terrorist villain. We've all come up against that. But, this is something that is well within the American playbook about, financing coups and taking over resources and stuff. So the difference between the First and Second World War and this one is now we're directly involved, using Israel basically as our gun, essentially, to control the what am I trying to think? The Middle East. I kept trying to say Middle East. So that's where we are. We don't really have all the answers at this point. So with that being said, we're going to keep on this subject as much as we can without hitting you over the head about it, hopefully. And we're going to continue to watch, the abortion situation unfold. And don't forget, Arizona's not alone in this. Indiana, where I am, was essentially the first in the nation to put up just this as a restrictive bill as this is. This just has got some attention because this bill dates back to 1864, literal Civil War time. So we'll keep on top of this kind of stuff, and we'll have more conversation. I want to thank you all for being in the chat with us today, and for joining us. It's been a great conversation. We really appreciate it. We will be back the same time next week with some more stories about what's going on in the world and around, and hopefully nothing horrible to report. Hopefully everything holds out pretty well, and we won't be reporting on some sort of horrible fresh hell that comes along. So, how is Indiana even in the Midwest? Because when people went west from east, that was as far west as they got at a certain point. So, that's how that happened. Geographically, it isn't, but colloquially, it is. We will, as always, I like to tell you guys, if you are, all of you, I should say, not use my Indiana colloquialism and call you guys. People don't like that anymore. But you can always reach out to us on our socials. My Twitter handle is right there. And then Jared is Last Minute Poll. You can reach him there. If you've got, some songs you'd like to hear him perform, no guarantees, but you could shout out a song to him. Maybe he'll play it for you. Any topics, conversation, anything you want us to address, or if we did address, you'd like us to explain further, we love to hear from you. So we would love to have you, as always, joining us and sending us any feedback that you feel like joining. Remember that I should have said this at the top of the hour, but remember that there is still a fundraiser going on for housing security for CJ and JB are running it. To get into a better situation. They're reaching their goal, but it's been a little slow going. So if you want to go over to the main pages and contribute to that or share those posts, you could find them easily. Rome is also still working on the Detroit Library. They got a little bit of funding, so they're moving ahead a little bit. Today he announced there's some Wi-Fi now at the location, so that's good. So just keep an eye out for if anything you want to share, or you got some money you want to put towards one of these causes, because they're really good causes and everybody's very open about the donations and where they're going and who they're coming from, and we all appreciate you very much. So with that being said, I usually cut to Jared at this time for a song, but I will just say adieu, and we will see you next week and around the internet. So take care, everyone. Much love to you.